In the last 29 hours, I have watched Jon Watts' Spider-Man No Way Home 2 times, and if I'm being honest, I'm not sure if that's enough time to convey my full thoughts on this film. It is truly a triumph in filmmaking. How exactly? To answer this, we need to travel back to April 2019, when the biggest film of all time, arguably, Avengers Endgame was released. For me and many others, I was never hyped for something more in my life. People from all across the internet came together to share theories, leaks, and any little bit of marketing we received for the film. There's no other way to put it. If you hadn't known about this film, were you living under a rock? It really seemed like the peak of blockbusters, and nothing could ever generate as much hype as it did. Until 2021. In a time where it felt like the movie theater was dying, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings came in and swept the box office, and effectively brought a new hope to cinemagoers, and persuaded many big studios to keep their big releases on their calendar, and this completely paid off. Around the same time, one could not come across a comment section that didn't ask questions like, when are we getting the new No Way Home trailer? And many variations of that. See, something interesting happened. Until basically the last month before the film, No Way Home had virtually zero marketing. Besides the single teaser trailer released in August 2021, there was virtually radio silence. Before I continue, I can't ignore the amount of leaks this film had. From the trailer getting leaked a day early, in awful quality thankfully, to the dozens and dozens of Reddit posts a day, this is easily the most leaks I've ever seen for a modern blockbuster. All of this aside though, these leaks did not ruin the experience whatsoever. Even when we got some garbage posters and one too many revealing clips, the ride up to the release of this film was an amazing, unforgettable ride. And that's my main point in calling the film a triumph. Spider-Man No Way Home did what some thought no film could ever do. It replicated and honestly maybe even surpassed the hype for Avengers Endgame. Now I think it's time to get into the main event. What did I think of the film? Right off the bat, I want to give a humongous shout out to Jon Watts. That man pulled a complete 180. Many disliked Watts for his direction of the first two films, but it's hard not to give him credit for this one. There are many stylistic choices that are amazing. Some standout scenes for me being when Peter and MJ first enter May's apartment after the chaotic reveal of Peter's identity. The scene where Peter follows his spider sense throughout Happy's apartment, trying to find the villain who's actually going to do something villainous. The scene of Peter brooding in the rain after the heartbreaking death of May. And the final swing at the start of Peter's new life. Watts did a fantastic job, and I can confidently say I'm not as worried for his upcoming take on the Fantastic Four. Before I talk about the villains, I want to talk about the heroic leads. First up, I'm going to talk about Tom Holland as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. All I can say is wow. Tom brought it to the next level for this film. As many others have said, this film really pushed Tom to a level where I can look at him and say, that's him. That's Spider-Man. The way Tom handles Peter's grief and feelings of anger, but also hope, shows an incredible range that not many young actors can pull off, which shows Tom will go great lengths in the industry, as well as his upcoming Spider-Man films. Tom stepped up his portrayal of Peter, too. Overall, I'm not sure what I can say that hasn't been said. Tom did amazing in this film, and has a bright future ahead of him. I'm going to keep it brief with Zendaya and Jacob Batalon as MJ and Ned Leeds respectively. Both nail exactly what their characters need to do with the story, and neither of them are used so obnoxiously that I was sick of them. They were there when they needed to be, and were great companions to Peter. Next, I'm going to talk about the story. This is where the major spoilers come in, so just be prepared for that if you're still watching for some reason and haven't seen the movie. Before the film was released, admittedly, I was a bit worried about the story. It seemed with 5 whole villains, the film would feel even more overstuffed than Spider-Man 3 or The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Thankfully, the villains were written very well, and there was a great balance among them. One of my hopes for the film was that the villains would, instead of being new versions of their characters portrayed by the same actors, they would instead be the same villains from the previous films with their arc carried over. I'm happy to say that this was the case, and I loved hearing these characters make references to the events of their films, and it was very interesting to see their stories continue to be played out, namely Octavius's. The overall structure of this film was great. I really enjoyed seeing the chaos of the first bits of the film, and the quick Matt Murdock cameo was great to see. I also really enjoyed finally seeing the bridge fight all pieced together, and then seeing Peter head out to the woods in his new black and gold suit and fighting Electro and Sandman. That was great. I do wish we saw more of the black and gold suit, as it was a really good design. Then, we saw Norman Osborn's grand entrance where he destroyed the Goblin Mask in a crazy good looking scene. Seriously, the cinematography was just amazing with the shot of the broken helmet. Definitely my favorite shot from the movie. Jumping ahead a bit, we see Peter and Doctor Strange duke it out in the mirror dimension. That was an awesome fight scene. And then in Act 2, we watched Peter begin to cure the villains, only to see Green Goblin foil Peter's plans with an incredible scene with Spider-Sense. Seriously, that dolly zoom just made the scene look so good and just so tense. I could feel my heart beating throughout the whole scene. This then led to an amazing fight scene of Spider-Man versus Green Goblin in the hallways of Happy's condo. This led to a devastating scene with the death of May Parker. But not before we finally see Tom Holland's Peter Parker receive the beautiful line, "With great power comes great responsibility." After this, Peter is broken, and it seems all hope is lost. Then, the kicker. The return of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. My audience erupted when they entered both times I watched this. This truly gave me goosebumps, and it was amazing to see them again. Then we see probably my favorite third act of all time, the three Spider-Mans versus the three multiversal villains. I have to say, one of my favorite sequences of the whole film was seeing the three Peters interact and just tell each other Spider-Man stories and reference their own films while waiting for the villains. It was everything I wanted it to be. The action of the final battle was great. Peter and Osborn's last battle was insanely good, and Tom and Willem both acted their hearts out. The film then ends with Doctor Strange successfully performing a spell that makes everyone forget who Peter Parker is, and Peter goes out on his own with a fresh start, making a beautiful new suit. They absolutely outdid themselves with the story, and it was so much better than I expected it to be. I want to talk about the performances of the villains. First, Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus. Molina seems like he was straight ripped out of Spider-Man 2. He still has the same classic anger towards Spider-Man and hatred of having the arm stuck to him. Molina does a great job, and the CGI de-aging is so well done, you can't even tell it was done. I really liked Otto having a redemption arc, and his contributions to help the Spider-Mans during the third act was really nice to see. I also love seeing the overhaul of Jamie Foxx's Electro. His design is so much better in this film, and he plays a much cooler character. My favorite thing about this performance is that Jamie is clearly having so much fun playing Electro. Jamie's really just playing himself. I want to quickly brush over Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman and Rhys Ifans' Lizard. Both are fine. It has always been clear that they were sort of reduced to side villains, but Sandman had a much bigger role than I expected, which was nice. Lizard was fine. He didn't really do much, but it was nice to see him again, as I actually really liked him in The Amazing Spider-Man. And the last villain is the GOAT himself, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Dafoe absolutely kills it in this film. His version of the Emerald Elf in this is bone-chilling, and the way he can snap from Norman to Goblin is something no other actor could pull off. He's a menacing villain and steals every scene he's in, and honestly, he might be better than he was in Spider-Man. Before I wrap up this review, I have to talk about the two other best characters in this movie, Peter Parker and Peter Parker. Seeing Tobey and Andrew on the big screen gave me joy that no other film could give me. Seeing all of the Spider-Mans is a dream come true for so many people, and the filmmakers absolutely nailed their characters. Tobey and Andrew feel as if they were ripped straight out of their respective films, and it's so cool to hear about what they've been up to since then and how that stuff has affected them. Both of them give amazing, fun, and emotional performances, and I think that they made the kid and everyone extremely joyous. Even though 90% of us were well aware that they were going to be in the film, that did not take away from seeing them whatsoever. So, what are my final thoughts? Spider-Man No Way Home is by absolutely no means perfect on any level. But in my Spider-Man fan, childlike eyes, this film is literally everything I've ever wanted out of a Spider-Man film, and it was done better than I could have expected it to be done. I can confidently say that Spider-Man No Way Home is tied with Spider-Man 2 as my favorite Spider-Man film. I will rewatch this film endlessly in the coming years, and I'm so happy that it turned out the way it did. Thank you, Jon Watts. Thank you, Marvel Studios. Thank you, Sony Pictures. And thank you to everyone who made this amazing film possible. I'm so excited for the future of Marvel Studios' Spider-Man.